Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Kaylin King and welcome back to another one of these Reddit creepy story videos, whatever you want to call them. Thank you to a bunch of you who have subscribed recently. They're just all coming in out of nowhere and I do appreciate that, so enjoy. And if you have any stories of your own and you'd like to share with the channel, please message me. And if you'd like to help the channel, there is a Patreon link down below and my book is available to buy on Amazon. But without wasting any more time, enjoy the video. So I shifted here in Chandigarh a few years back. Before we could actually move in, we had to stay at some other place not far from the home I am currently living in. We also knew a family which we were actually very close to. The children and I were even good friends. Even till this day, we are good friends. So we used to play football together with some other children in the Society's park, which used to be crowded most of the time. And we would always observe some children playing beside some tree or bushes. So one day we were casually playing around and some kid kicked the ball towards them, and we kindly asked them to pass the ball, and so they did. Everything seemed pretty normal, but later all the CCTVs were being checked due to some theft in the society. We went there and saw us playing on the big screen, but something was odd there. The children were missing in the footage. And then came the moment the guy kicked the ball towards their spot, and then what I saw really terrifies me to this day. The ball out of nowhere came out of those bushes and rolled towards us. We were all in shock. Even one of the friends I mentioned earlier had high fever for some days. Then I moved from that place to the house I currently live in. But still, every time I pass from the society on my way back home from college, it still gives me goosebumps. There's a place in Nova Scotia known locally as Little Girl's Grave. It is a gravestone of a young girl named Catherine McIntosh. She died of an illness and was originally buried in McLennan Cemetery. However, due to a dispute with a neighbor, her body was dug up and moved to the side of Greenvale Road in front of the family farm. One night I went with two friends to visit the gravestone. It was a dark and gloomy night, driving down the eerie winding dirt road until we came upon the location. We brought a toy to leave at the gravestone. The local law surrounding the site says to leave a toy for her and to never take a toy away. It wasn't until we left and began driving down the dirt road that we had a paranormal experience. We noticed on the front windshield in the condensation a small child's footprint on the glass. It was so detailed and human-like. It scared us quite a bit, to say the least. One of the friends I had visited the gravesite with, we worked at the same restaurant at the time. A few days after we had visited the site, we were working together and we both heard something truly bizarre. It was the sound of a child laughing, very faintly. We both stared at each other in disbelief. We had no idea where the sound originated from whatsoever, as there was no one around except the two of us. Not long after this, we had a falling out and have not spoken with each other since 2013. This is one of the paranormal experiences that I had encountered in my life. If anyone who reads this has had any similar experiences at this gravestone, please share it with this community. Hello, I've been putting off writing this for a while now because some people I told were horrified to be close to me afterwards. I was in my freshman year of college. I wasn't doing well mentally. A lot of thoughts jumping in my mind. My room was fairly sized. I had one roommate. We were doing fine. Halfway through the winter semester, I got a horrible feeling of anxiety in this room. If I went to my friend's room, it would be fine. But I always felt like something was watching me in mine. My roommate also started to feel this way. She would constantly be getting sleep paralysis and horrid dreams. She finally had enough and started sleeping at her boyfriend's. So I was alone. Everything was gloomy. I had to sleep with some lights on because I just felt like someone was there. About 2 days later, my roommate was still not there. I got to bed, and I hear breathing. It wasn't close to me, but I could still hear it. I was facing my roommate's bed. Behind me was a brick wall. I opened my eyes, and I see this black figure laying down on her bed. I suddenly freaked out, but tried to stay still and kept watching. And when I did, it sat up and looked at me, and had burgundy red eyes, and like a black mist emitting from its body. I hated that. I immediately turned to the brick wall and started saying some mantras, not my first spirit, and covered my face with the blankets. When I thought it was going to be okay, I stopped, and all of a sudden, I felt something right near me, and the spirit said in my ear, "If you sleep tonight, I will kill you." I was terrified. I tried not to sleep, but I accidentally passed out, and oh boy, that dream I had that night was weird. Basically, I was in a desert with these people sitting in a circle, and in the middle was the dark figure. They started chanting, and I was scared to say anything. I had no idea what was being said, but the leader was yelling at me to chant with them. But it was too late, and the dark figure stabbed me in the heart, and I just laid there until like this blue fire rose around me, and these circles with lines on the sides appeared all over my body, and I started chanting, and the dark figure died. I woke up falling out of bed and clutched my chest because it felt like someone stabbed me, but no blood, no open wounds. I never saw that spirit again after that. I called my RA, and she said that last year some girls had the same experience with a dark figure with red eyes. They ended up blessing the room after the semester was over. Definitely freaky, hated every second of it. I, male 40, unintentionally piggybacked on someone's post, and instead of taking it away from them, I figured I would make my own. Growing up in a Hispanic household, you hear a lot about the paranormal, and mostly everyone has experienced something. I am no different. My parents bought their home when I was around 3, and ever since then, I always felt or witnessed odd things. But there are too many little incidents to bore you with them. But they all have one thing in common, and that is that they all happened close by or in the hallway to that home. This event does not happen there, and instead happens in my home just last year. My mom passed away in 2020. Since 2001, she had dialysis 3 times a week at 5 a.m. and I was in my 20s and not married and lived with both my parents at the time. I would take her every time to appointments. Whenever I did a late shift at work or would oversleep, she would walk to my door and say, "I'm ready, we can go." I would get up and drive her. I'm now married with kids of my own. And in my house, last year, my wife had scheduled an outpatient surgery in the early morning. I was working in another state, but drove home the day before. I got home in early hours of the morning and told my wife I was going to sleep on the couch for 3 hours till we had to leave. Her wake-up alarm was about to ring, so with her eyes closed, she said, "Okay." I was in a deep sleep, and the 3 hours flew by like a wink. But then I clearly heard my mom say, "I'm ready, we can go." I woke up and realized what I had heard. I hear my wife open the restroom door, and she walks over to me and says, "Oh good, I was about to wake you." To this day I don't know what I heard, and no, she is still around watching over me. It wasn't so much as a scary incident, but definitely unexplained. My girlfriend and I recently purchased a home this past summer. We have 4 dogs and no real neighbors aside from town halls, church, and a park. Our house's history is that it was built in 1949 and handed down through generations in the same family till us. After we bought the place, we immediately began on fixing it up. Just paint, mudding, refinishing floors, and some landscaping. This took us about 2 months after buying before we moved in. Soon after we moved in, I started a new job that works night, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Around 11:30 a.m., I'm just about to fall asleep with the pups in bed with me, and we all hear 4 distinct knocks that sounded like they came from either my ceiling or the top of one of the windows. I didn't think much of it until it happened again, 2 more times within 5 minutes of the first knocks. Each time 4 knocks. Started thinking it may be a bird hitting the side of the house or something along those lines. But then the 4th time it knocks, I was standing next to the window I thought it came from and didn't see anything. There's no doubt in my mind it was the window that was being tapped on, so I tested it. I tapped on the window 4 times just like it had, and almost immediately it responded with the same taps. I sent my dog out into the back to try and scare it out, but there was nothing at all around the house. This wasn't the first time either of us have heard stuff here, but it's only our bedroom. We have no idea what it means or why it's only there, but even recently been hearing what sounded like pitter-patters in the attic above our room. I grew up in a small town in Texas and lived in a house with my sister and parents. My parents weren't right for each other and were divorced when I was around 8 years old. In the same year they divorced, something would happen to me in that house that I'll never forget. I've never been as frightened as I was this night. This is what I experienced. First off, I need to describe the layout of my room. I had bunk beds as a kid. Why? I don't know. The bottom bed was always empty, and it never had any bedding on it except the plastic mattress cover that you put on kids' beds in case they wet the bed. Anyway, when you walked into the room, there was a wall in front of you, and a square room opened up to your right. In the opposite corner from the door was my bed. The bed was elevated, laying perpendicular to the bottom bed. The foot of the bottom bed stuck out about 4 feet past the top. There was a ladder directly to the right of the bottom bed to climb up to the top bed as well. The bed was made of real wood and was known to creak a lot, even when the temperature in the room would change due to the AC or heater. I also had a glowworm nightlight that was plugged in about a foot from the door. It was a dim light, but there was enough light to see if I needed to go to the restroom. Initially the bed creaking would scare me, but I got used to it over time. On this night I'm laying awake in bed, listening to my parents have an argument. Nearing the end of their marriage, they were arguing rather loudly and longer than usual. The bed had creaked a few times as the AC began to cool the room down, but I wasn't fazed until I heard a different sound, a deep-weighted, familiar sound. Familiar because it was a sound the ladder would make when I would step on it, a different tone than when the ladder would settle. I was initially startled, but I gave myself a pep talk about how I wasn't a baby anymore and shouldn't be scared of noises in the night. I was able to calm my nerves until I heard the exact same sound again and then again, in a rhythm, as if someone was walking up the ladder. Each step that was taken, I became increasingly more anxious. By the 4th footstep, I had sunken into my mattress, clenching the sheets with my hands. I was petrified. Okay, someone is definitely walking up my ladder, I thought. Like children do, I determined on the count of 3 I was going to quickly lean over the side of the bed to see what it was. Because I was going to scare whoever it was. 1, 2, 2.5, 3. I jerked to my left and leaned over the side of the railing to surprise the mysterious person. There was nothing there, just an empty wooden ladder. I shook the ladder, assuming it was just the wood settling, making sure all the creaks were out. There, I thought, assuming I'd fixed the issue all by myself, like a big boy. As I lay there recounting what had happened, I thought, no, I know what I heard, and it was not normal sounds. I'm not being a scaredy cat. I was glued to my bed, afraid to move. Something is in here with me, I whispered. My parents were still arguing. I decided to focus on what they were saying and not what was happening in my room, just to ignore/avoid it. As if this presence was not to be ignored, I heard another sound, another heavy, distinct sound. The sound of someone standing, laying, or otherwise putting their weight on the bottom bed. The box springs on these beds were old enough to make the sound they do when they're wearing out. And because they lay on wooden frames, the sound was magnified. There is zero doubt about the sound. I know what I heard, and there was no mistaking it, or kid-splaining this one. This time I apprehensively leaned to my left to peek over the side of the railing, staying as close to the mattress as possible. Normally if I look over the side onto the bottom bed, the nightlight would illuminate the plastic cover enough to see that it was white/opaque in color, with no other colors or shades present, just uniformly white. If there was something left on the bed, the nightlight would cast a shadow from the object across part of the mattress. When I peeked over the side of the railing to investigate what I heard, I could see that the mattress cover was all white, except for 2 large dark spots. 2 shadows right next to each other, yet no clothes or toys were on the bed. These 2 shadows were distinctly shaped. They were footprints. You could see the mattress cover was sunk into the mattress, clearly with the ripples/creases in the cover where it was being stretched. There was absolutely no confusing what I was looking at with any other explanation. I came unglued. I jumped back as far into the corner of my bed as possible, up against the wall in the far corner of my room, knees tucked into my chest, arms holding my knees, and I started screaming at the top of my lungs for my mother. I was shaking in terror. Within seconds, my parents had ended their argument, burst into the door, and flipped the light switch on. They kept asking me what had happened, but I wouldn't say. Was it listening? Would it come back to get me if I told? I said nothing about what had happened, and continued to cry and shake uncontrollably. I slept in their bed for the rest of the night. The next morning, they asked me again what had happened. I explained that I had just wanted them to stop fighting, fearing whatever it was would come back for me. I'd never been more scared in my entire life, and I'll be 40 this year. It was so real. There was no mistaking what I saw and heard. Had there been any explanation for what had happened, I surely would have just forgotten about it. Years later, in my 20s, I asked my mother if she remembered that night. I explained that I had screamed for her, crying, shaking, and wouldn't tell them anything. She looked at me and said, "Yeah, I do. When you screamed, we honestly thought that someone had broken in and was stabbing you. I know that's dark, but that's what you sounded like." Though I don't recall this, she said my father had brought his gun with him into the room. I explained to her what had actually happened that night. She stared at me the whole time, wide-eyed. "Are you fucking kidding me? I had 2 separate things happen to me in that house, too." "No shit." This is how my mom talks. She proceeds to tell me a story about making our lunches to take to school, and the bread thing moved to the floor when she would turn around to get something from the refrigerator. The other story I didn't believe because it was reminiscent of a movie I've seen where dining room chairs would move on top of the table multiple times. It may be true, but I just didn't feel like the same energy from her as the first story that she seemed passionate and certain about. They both could be fabricated because my mom is weird, but there's no doubt in my mind what occurred that night in my room. I'll never forget. It all started in 2011 when I was 10 years old and my sister was 14. We were playing in our childhood home, running through the house and horseplaying, when we noticed this girl who appeared to be around 12 years old and was dressed in a blue and white dress with long blonde hair. She looked to be around from the 1930s or 1940s. We were the type of kids who believed in the paranormal and things like that, so we weren't that scared. The only ones home at the time were our parents and us. There were no other kids at that house. We stopped and looked at her, then at each other, trying to think of a way to make sense of why we were seeing a girl that we shouldn't be seeing. The girl was just standing in the middle of the room, looking around at everything. We both said at the same time, "Hey, who are you?" She didn't say anything. She just walked through the wall. We both jumped back and immediately went to the other side of the wall, which happened to be my older sister's room at the time. And she was gone, and nowhere to be found. We go to our parents and tell them about what we've just seen, and of course they don't believe us. Over the next couple of weeks, we tried to think of why we saw the girl, and why she appeared to walk through the wall. We couldn't think of a reason why we saw her, so we decided to look up some stuff about our house. We found out that there was a fire at a mental hospital in 1952 that took the lives of 17 people. We believe that the girl that we saw was one of the victims of that fire, and was trying to find a way to safety. Now we're 21 and 26, and still don't know who or why we saw that girl. And that's it for the video. If you guys enjoyed it, please leave a like, comment down below which one you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. If you'd like to support the channel, there is a Patreon link down below. There's also a Buy Me Coffee link down below. I'm not too sure how that works, but it is there. Also, if you like these horror stories and you'd like to read a full-on novel, I am a horror writer and my book is available on Amazon. So, go have a look there, and until next time, bye bye.